eternal, are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with six senses, which include the mind. So there is a little bit long purport. I'll quickly read it and then we'll come back to this verse. In this verse, the identity of living entity is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life, and is in his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatana. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansion is called Vishnu Tattva, and the second expansion are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion, and the living entities are separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Ram, Narsimhadev, Vishnu Murti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual entities of the Godhead are always present. Similarly, the separated expansion of living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the living entities have also fragmental qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity has an individual soul, his personal individuality, and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a contingent soul. And by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is freed from all material condition, and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord, and in his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendent loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. The living entity, not only the human beings and the cats and the dogs, but even the greater controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. The word Karsati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in his material existence. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower spaces of life. It is clear, however, in this verse that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and the senses, and when he is liberated, this material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests in the individual capacity. That is what I want to focus today, that how this all process happen, both in Bhakti Yoga and in the other process, Hatha Yoga. The following information is there. Madhyandi Nayan Shuti Sava Esha Brahma Nishtha Idam Shariram Mrityam Artirsajya Brahma Bhishma Padya Brahmana Pashyati Brahmana Shrunoti Brahmana Vaidam Sarvam Anubhavati. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up his material embodiment and enters in the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body. And in his spiritual body, he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face. And he can understand the Supreme Personality as he is. In Smriti, also it is understood that in the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godheads. As far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entities and the expansion of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entities gets a spiritual body by a grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Mamay Vansha, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, is also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. The conception is not applicable here because the Sanskrit word Sanatan, that is eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that Dehino Asmin Yatha, in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original position, spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is equally one, just as the parts and parcel of gold are also gold. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. I still cannot share, Prabhu.
Krishna, can you help out, please?
So the translation says, the living entities in this conditional world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditional life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind.
Prabhuji, do you want to try?
Yeah, I'm host now, yes. The living, yes, thank you, Prabhu. Yes, I can share now. I'll just share, okay? Yeah. Yeah, it showed I can share, but it did not let me share.
You may have to restart yourself in the case. Everybody can restart. You, by co-host position, you can share.
Okay, so I have to restart. I have to log out and log in, Prabhu. Yeah, it popped up as a message that I can share, but it's not letting me share. Okay, so I'll come back to. So in this verse, the living entity of the living being is clearly given. So that is the question I always face, and I think you all must be facing it, that how do we get into the consciousness that we are not this body, we are this soul? We all struggle, at least I struggle. And this is the most difficult realization to have, that when we start living like a spirit soul, spirit life, spiritual life, and then how to live that spiritual life in the material world. That's the common question I always get asked, and very fascinating also. So when I was meditating on this verse, and I realized that there is a relationship between soul and super soul, and super soul is source of everything to the soul, and then soul is the source of running the body, and how this everything operates. Then I have got some Prabhupada writes very elaborately in Canto 3 and in Canto 4 also in Bhagavatam, where I picked up some realizations, and hopefully that will make sense, and that will help us to understand that how the spirit soul is actually controlling our body, and depending upon our false ego or our desire, we are enjoying or suffering. So we know that we are fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Yeah, Prabhupada writes in this verse, it is not that he assumes individuality in his conditioned life and it is liberated, state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. So you will not believe, I still get asked this question, that we get merged and that's our ultimate situation. So Prabhupada is very categorically saying that this is not so. And he's also talking that the external situation of the spirit soul is to serve. That's why the spirit soul actually exists. So I would like to refer a verse from chapter 2, because Prabhupada writes about chapter 2, in which when Krishna is starting answering question to Arjuna, who is bewildered that I don't want to fight, I don't want to kill my relatives, grandfather, great-grandfather, my guru. Then he says the first instruction we start is actually you are not this body, you are this soul. Same thing, she is starting with the same point, and that's where he start giving an argument that how the soul exists, what the soul does, and how soul change bodies, and so then why you are bewildered. So I picked up the verse number 17, which says, Avinashi tu tadvidi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasam avyaya yasya na kaschit kartum arhati. Translation: know that what pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. That is instruction Krishna is giving to give Arjuna confidence that you cannot kill anyone, because nobody is this body. We are not this body, we are this soul. So know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible, and no one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. So soul is imperishable. Now, Prabhupada on this writes very clearly about in this verse, the purport about the size of soul and how actually these things happen. And he gives reference to it says you are the host now. How do I do it? I don't know, Prabhu. It's not letting me do, and I don't want to disturb. Thank you, Krishna Prabhu. So what I was saying, the verse clearly explains that real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. And everyone is conscious of the pain and pleasure of the body in part or as a whole. The spreading of the consciousness is limited within one's own body. That's the difference between soul and super soul. So we feel the pain, we feel the consciousness. That is because of the spirit soul, because the soul present there. Now, the soul is actually, Prabhupada said, is like a spark. The very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of active principle of some medicine spread throughout the body. So that is the effect of when we have got spirit soul in our body. And we know when we have no spirit soul in the body, what happens. So how the soul is as small, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about that it is the 10,000 parts of the tip of the hair. That is how small the soul is. But it's spread in our entire body. The consciousness is in our body. Like we feel the pain, we feel like medicine is affecting our body. That's how spirit soul, we can feel the spirit soul existent. And as I said, that when there is no spirit soul, that person is actually dead. So that is the power of the soul. And nobody can actually, Prabhupada is writing in this part that nobody can revive that process. That if somebody's spirit soul has left the body, this spirit soul will not actually be revived back, and that person cannot be alive. Now, when I was further doing this how this entire process works, and about this Hatha Yoga side, this whole thing, because situation of a Bhakti Yogi and the situation of Hatha Yogi is different. How they actually realize the soul and how they actually perfect their life. The process is different. So in the Mukund Upanishad, it talks about very nicely. It says that the soul is atomic in size and it can be perceived by perfect intelligence. That's why most of the people cannot understand what is soul, and they cannot understand the existence of soul also. The atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air: prana, apan, vyan, saman, and udan. Actually, there are 10 types of this, which I'm coming back to this. Is situated within the heart. So when the soul exists, soul is in the heart, and this is floating in the 5 kinds of air: pran, apan, vyan, and saman, and udan. And spread is influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. And because of this air, we feel the presence of spirit soul in various parts of the body. And when the soul is purified from the contamination of the 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. This is very interesting. That how do we purify that those air, those 5 types of air which I talked about, and that is where senses come into the play. That how do we purify those air, and then how we purify this soul, and that's where this Hatha Yogi go mechanical. This is a mechanical process of controlling this purity of this air. So in Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the 5 kinds of air, encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures. Now Sanjeev Prabhu can relate. Not for any material profit, but for the liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of material atmosphere. That is Hatha Yogi. They are trying to control this existence of these 5 airs, which actually have a different function, which I'll try to cover up. They try to talk about, and they try to control, and they control by purifying that air. They want to control. They want to purify the soul. Yeah, and so it means that Hatha Yogi. Not all the Hatha Yogi will be Krishna conscious. Not all the yogis are on the same, but they all believe in the existence of the soul. Only the insane man can think of the atomic soul as all-pervading Vishnu Tattva. And now the next is, there is a soul and super soul. That Krishna is very clear that is Prabhupada is writing that the soul and super soul both are present in the heart. But not all the yogi believe in the same philosophy. They go merge, or but they are Hatha Yogi. So we'll focus on the Hatha Yoga part, that how they're trying to purify their heart by controlling the air, by sitting postures, those asanas. Now again, Mundak Upanishad, not Mukunda. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over the spiritual body. According to Mundak Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity. And because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientist, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. So this is other side of the people who are actually, they don't believe in soul, but they believe in heart. They believe in the energy that they are getting. Means they have no scientific reason that how the heart is pumping. That's the point actually I want to bring in, that actually it is because of soul the heart is pumping, and heart is a source of energy to entire body. Whatever you want to do with the body, somebody wants to become a bodybuilder, or somebody wants to become a sports person, or somebody wants to do gymnastic. The source is heart. That's where this again coming, and the source of energy to heart is soul, and soul is connected to spirit soul. That's from where everything is coming. This is so obvious, so mechanical, so clear. But for a Hatha Yogi, not all of them, and most of the modern world doesn't believe in this philosophy. But Gita and our scriptures talks about this very elaborately. So it further writes The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the super soul, and thus all the energies of the bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles, which carry the oxygen from the lung, gather energy from soul. When the soul passes away from this position, activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Is it not true? We have got doctors here in. So they don't believe in existence of soul. But they don't know from where the energy to heart is coming. Prabhupada writes further, medical science, however, does not admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. This is the biggest fallacy, and that's what we need to understand to become more convinced that we are not this body, we are this soul. Because soul is the source of energy for everything, whatever we do. Because it starts from pumping of the heart. Imagine if the blood doesn't circulate. Imagine if the blood doesn't go to lungs. Imagine if the food, energy or the nutrition doesn't come to heart and it is not circulated. What will happen to the rest of the body? And that's why heart is the most critical part. And that's getting energy from soul. Now, in the Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Prabhupada writes, which I picked up some points just to make sense out of it, about this type of air and these asanas. And also it talks about Kundalini Chakra also, because that's where Hatha Yogi focus. And I will compare it to how the Bhakti Yogi, they don't need to go all these things. That will come to this later part. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the living entities has merged into the air of life, which acts in different ways for circulation. There is Pran, Apan, Udan, Vyan, and Saman. And because of the life air functions in this five-fold way, it is compared to the five-hooded serpent. The soul passes through the Kundalini Chakra like a serpent crawling on the ground. The life air is compared to Urag, the serpent. The Panchvritti is the desire to satisfy the senses attracted by five sense objects, namely form, taste, sound, smell, and touch. That's what our senses want to do. They want to smell nice things. They want to taste nice things. They want to listen to nice music. They want to smell nice things. And they want to touch and feel and enjoy. Five-headed. And that's where all the problem starts. Because as soon as the focus changes, these five sense objects come into force, then we are into this problem, this chakra. We'll discuss this further as hopefully I can make sense out of it. And it's a difficult topic which I picked up, but yeah, I'll try. The movement of the body are first generated from the heart. And all the activities of the body are made possible by the senses. True? Yeah, senses, they are the source, powered by the 10 kinds of air within the body. Now we go further into this, that how this senses work. The Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam is so scientific. I don't know why people don't understand it. The 10 kinds of air described as follows. The main air passing through the nose is breathing is called pran. Imagine if this is not there, how the smell sense object will be fulfilled. Yeah. The air which passes through the rectum as evacuated bodily air is called apan, digestive system. The air which adjusts the food stuff within the stomach and within the sometimes sound as the belching is called saman. The air which passes through the throat and the stoppage of which constitutes suffocation is called udan. And the total air which circulates throughout the entire body is called Vyan air. Subtler than these 5 airs are others also, because we are complicated, no? So Krishna has created more things for us. That which facilitate the opening of the eyes, mouth, etc. is called Nag air. Remember how this eyelids open, no? What science works. We don't want to think about it. The air which increases appetite is called Krakara air. The air which helps contraction is called Kurma. The air which helps relaxation by opening the mouth wide is Yaning. Is called Devadatta air. And the air which helps sustenance is called Dhananjaya air. So these 10 types of air where living entity is floating into this, and depending upon those 5 senses, this air is actually getting active. And those different senses are operating, those mechanical, those eyes, those nose, those mouth, those other part of the body. Very scientific hydraulic system. I don't know how it works, but it works. And the source of energy is heart. And source of energy to heart is soul. And soul is getting from super soul. I remember when this class, when I was making notes. I've got notes, 2000 class note. I'm referring to those notes. When Amrish was telling me, I was making a lot of notes, but I never understood those things. Of course, I understood air, that we are made up of Kapha, Pitta, and Vayu. So Vayu plays big role in our body. And this is how it plays the role. And that's where Hatha Yoga is focusing. Prabhupada further writes, all these airs are generated from the center of the heart, which is one only. Yeah, the source is one. The central energy is superior energy of the Lord, who is seated within the heart with the soul of the body, who acts under the guidance of the Lord. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verse number 15. Very famous verse. Sarvasva chaham risanna visto matta smritim jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvai rama eva vidyo vedanta krid veda vid eva chaham. The complete central force is generated from the heart by the Lord, who is seated there and who helps the conditioned soul is remembering and forgetting. The conditioned state is due to the soul's forgetfulness of his relationship or subordination of the Lord. One who wants to continue to forget the Lord is helped by the Lord to forget him birth after birth. But one who remembers him by dint of association with the devotee of the Lord is helped to remember him more and more. Thus, the conditioned soul can ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. So why I got this verse here, that we are talking about the mechanical side. Now this remembrance is also coming. And intelligence also coming. The source of this also Krishna. And that is based on our desire to enjoy or desire to travel or desire to, that's false ego. So again, we are responsible, and this is how the process works. And now, so what a bhakti yogi should do in this situation? And of course, I will talk about this little bit of Hatha Yoga, means how they actually practice it. That in this situation, where do we stand? So very nice pastime is actually given by Prithu Maharaj when he is leaving body, because that is the ultimate perfection of realizing that we are not this body, and how we actually leave our body so that we go back to Godhead. So Prithu Maharaj, before coming to what I'm going to talk about, he actually Yeah, he practiced a lot of yoga, and he has gone doing a lot of austerity before he realized about Krishna, and then he actually um, uh, followed the process which I'm going to talk to you about leaving the body, about the spirit soul, that how the spirit soul should leave the body. What is the perfection? How this happened? So I don't know much about it, but I'm talking about it. So after the class, don't ask me questions. Okay. Of course, I will try my best, but this is a difficult topic I picked up. So for me at least. So this is chapter 4, verse number 23. Uh, sorry, Canto 4, verse number, chapter number 23, verse number 14. Samit Samitya Payum Parshinyabhyam Vayum Uttasaraya Chanaiha Nabhyam Kostheva Avasthapya Vidhi Uraha Kantha Shirshani. Translation. When Maharaj Prithu practiced a practical yogic sitting posture, he blocked the doors of his anus with his ankles, pressed his right and left calves, and gradually raised his life air upward, passing it on to the circle of his navel, up to his heart and throat, and finally pushed it upward to the central position between his two eyebrows. Prabhupada described this process in purport very nicely, which I picked up some of them, not the entire purport, about that how this entire change is happening and what is, yeah. So the sitting posture described here is called Muktasana. In yoga process, after following the strict regulative principle controlling sleeping, eating, and mating, one is allowed to practice the different sitting postures. Means we should not do unless we follow these four things. The ultimate aim of yoga is to enable one to give up his body according to his own free will. That is the purpose of yoga, so that we can go back to Godhead. Just to connect, this is a process to connect him. The ultimate aim of yoga is to enable one to give up his body according to his own free will. One who has attained the ultimate summit of yoga practice can live in the body as long as he likes, or as long as he is not completely perfect. Leave the body to go anywhere within or outside the universe. That is what yogic process, that is what the yogis can do. From the description of this verse, it appears that Maharaj Prithu had no desire to promote himself to the higher planetary system. He wanted to return home immediately back to Godhead. Although Maharaj Prithu stopped all practice of mystic yoga after realizing Krishna consciousness, he took advantage of his previous practice and immediately placed himself in a Brahma Bhuta platform in order to accelerate his return to Godhead. So even with Prithu Maharaj, this happened, that he was practicing mystic yoga before he realized Krishna consciousness, because he stopped all those practices and got into Brahma Bhuta platform in order to accelerate his return to Godhead. That should be a desire. Now about the aim of the particular system of asana known as the sitting posture for liberation or Muktasana, is to attain success in Kundalini Chakra. That again we are getting to Hatha Yoga side. To liberate the soul. And gradually raise the life here from the Mooladhara Chakra to the Swadhisthana Chakra. Different stages. Then to Manipura Chakra, the Anahata Chakra, the Vishuddha Chakra, and finally to the Agya Chakra. When the yogi reaches the Agya Chakra, between the two eyebrows, he is able to penetrate the Brahma Randhra, or the hole in the skull, and go to any planet he desires, up to the spiritual kingdom of Vaikuntha or Krishna Lok. This is Hatha Yogi process. Kundalini Chakra, by controlling the air, by perfecting the asanas. This is how they can do it, and they have that Bhagavatam talks about it. The purpose of Muktasana practice is to come to the Brahma Bhuta stage. For without being onto the Brahma Bhuta stage, one cannot be promoted to the spiritual sky, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Even if you're Hatha Yogi, if you're not in a Brahma Bhuta stage, we will not get there. Mam cha yoga vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetana brahma bhuyate kalpate brahma bhuyaya kalpate. The bhakti yoga practices, the bhakti yogi practicing bhakti yoga is always situated on the Brahma Bhuta stage. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. If a devotee is able to continue on the Brahma Bhuta platform, he enters the spiritual sky automatically. So this is for Bhakti Yogis. If a devotee is able to continue on the Brahma Bhuta platform, he enters the spiritual sky automatically after death and returns to Godhead. Consequently, a devotee need not feel sorry for not having practiced the Kundalini Chakra or not penetrating the 6 chakras, one after another, which I've just spoken. As far as Maharaj Prithu was concerned, he had already practiced this process. And since he did not want to wait for the time when his death would occur naturally, he took advantage of the Sata Chakra penetration process and thus gave up the body according to his own free will and immediately entered the spiritual sky. So that is the power of a Bhakti Yogi, and that is how the soul can be liberated following a Bhakti Yoga process or a Hatha Yoga process. But Brahma Bhuta stage is very important. We have the living entity has to get into that stage. So the verse I was referring to, because I touched upon so many topics. Mamai vancho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manaha sasthani indriyani prakritisthani karsati. The living entity in this conditioned world are eternal, fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses. That's what we discussed. That's why they have to take this process, the Kundalini Chakra process, or follow those, practicing those asanas by actually becoming Hatha Yogi. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with six senses, which include the mind. And the source of, the mind is the main, mind is the store of our desires, no? And that's where all the problem starts. So spirit soul is the source of everything, whatever is happening in our body, our senses, any body part, it cannot move unless spirit soul is involved into this. If spirit soul is not there, it will not work. That's what we discussed. And because of those 10 types of air, all those mechanical transmissions are actually happening. Those hydraulic pressures are going and those things are working. And for them, air to work, all those bodily parts are actually involved, all those nutrition and this and that. But everything will stop as soon as heart will stop when the soul leave the body. And for soul to leave the body, to go back to Godhead, the best process is Bhakti Yoga process. Yes, Prithu Maharaj has done it because of the reason given that he wanted to expedite the process. Now, before I close and take some questions, I'll try my best. In chapter 18, verse 61, Krishna concludes this by saying very famous verse. We refer this all the time about living entity and super soul. Ishwaraha sarva bhutanam hridaya deshe adun tisthati Brahmanya sarva bhutani yantraduhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. O Arjuna, and is directing the wandering of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Tell me, after this verse, if the material scientists and doctors don't believe in existence of soul, what else we can tell them? Krishna is so clear. Prabhupada is writing everything so clearly, explaining everything so clearly. Because they cannot see the soul. Krishna is very clearly saying, "Oh Arjuna," and is directing the wandering of all living entities who are seated on a machine made up of material energy. So somebody who is struggling like me, that we are not this body, we are this soul. This explanation by Srila Prabhupada and Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita should make my faith stronger that we are not this body, we are this soul. Okay, how do we live as a soul in this material world? For that, again, Krishna gives a lot of instructions in Bhagavad Gita, which he has given to Arjun. Based on that, Arjun got ready to kill his own family. So it means we also can do it, as long as we believe that we are not this body, we are the soul, and soul is the source of everything. So that's my discussion for today. And if anybody has got relation, and if I've got, and I'm not perfect, I must have done mistakes, which I do all the time. So please do correct me or share your relation. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Avinash. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for your nice class. A lot of information for devotees to get, and digest. So if anyone has any questions or realizations, please feel free to ask now. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you, Avinash Prabhu, for your very nice and informative class. It's a lot of information about Hatha Yoga, and you talked about the heart.
Sorry,
is the
Prabhuji.
seat.
Sorry, Prabhuji. Avinash, can you please make me the host now so I can move around the screen, no, for people? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I can't do much, can I?
You are host now or a co-host? Krishna's video co-host or host?
No, I was not. Krishna Prabhu, you can try.
To be host. I'll just give me 1 second. Let me try something.
Yes, Prabhu, you are the host now.
Yes, Prabhuji. Please, you can start. Sanjeev Prabhu, you have a question now.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Avinash Prabhu, for a nice class. But just have a question about the heart. As you earlier said that it's a seat of the soul. When I was doing a course, a first aid course, they were telling that in a heart attack, they can use sometimes CPR and some those defibrillator, what is called defib. It's like passing through the current to start the heart. So now the air, the different airs you talked about in the body, it carries the consciousness or carries the is it like in a form of electrical current, or how that works, Prabhuji? In the defib situation, that situation when his heart stops.
I don't know. I'll try. I have heard from Amrit Prabhu before. Means actually heart, once the soul leaves the body, mechanical devices or electrical devices cannot do anything. They are not Narad Muni, as Narad Muni brings the living entity back to the body and they say, who am I? Are you my parent? Yeah, Chitraketu, son. So, so those situations, there is still, the soul has not left the body and they are trying to make it mechanically possible, or that person has not finished his lifetime. That's a devotee, that's how the devotee will think. They still got some karma. So that becomes an excuse, and otherwise, if it was always the case, then they will always get that person revived. No, I'll give you this push and you're liver. No, that it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. Most of the time it doesn't happen, but it happens, and they take a chance, no, which is good. Because if there is some problem in the heart and soul want to stay there, but heart is actually having a clog or something like this, okay, let's get rid of this. That's what I think, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. It's like as you said, actually nicely explained that soul is still there. So it's when it's left the body, then no equipment can revive it. Yes, Prabhuji.
Otherwise, they'll bring another artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, bring the soul back.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Avinash Prabhu. Thank you very much for a nice class and a lot of references that you share. It's quite a lot to actually digest. I got just one query. You did actually talk about Prithu Maharaj and how we use the yogic system to expedite the process going back to Godhead. So, you can only do it if you actually master that process. And even in the Bhakti Yoga process, you said that this is a base process, that you can actually use to go back to Godhead. But is there any process that you can expedite in this process? If you, I don't know, in any situation like that?
Sorry, Prabhuji, you're muted. Avinash.
Yeah, I'm speaking confidently. Okay. So you are talking about leaving expediting the process of leaving the body.
Yeah, in the Bhakti Yoga process, anything like that?
That's what Prithu Maharaj is doing, no?
But that he used a yogic system not to do that.
Yes, that's the yoga system. That's what I know. That's yeah. But normally what I've seen, the devotees, they don't want to leave. They want to serve Krishna. They don't want to leave. They don't want to serve Krishna as much as possible. See, Prabhupada, while he was leaving body, he was still preaching. He was still dictating, no? Same with Maharaj. Till last breath means people, doctor, hospital staff saying, no, don't go. And that is final instruction he was giving at the Panvel somewhere, no? So that's a devotee situation. That's my understanding. Maybe Amrisho can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, Hare Krishna, no, that is correct. That is the correct answer. Also, the mechanical process requires practice, that's right, in the Bhagavatam. And at the same time, when we are practiced in Bhakti Yoga throughout our lives, then this process also becomes automatically known. And I've seen that also. I've not experienced it, but I've seen it in devotee. So, but it is very, very rare. Only those who are extremely dedicated in remembrance of Krishna, they can achieve it. And the easiest process is chanting Hare Krishna. It's Yuga Dharma. Full stop. So we focus upon our purified chanting. That's it. That's what we've done. So all the answers are very good, are correct. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Avinash Prabhu. Thank you very much for your very nice class. I had a question that, you know, how the soul, the spirit soul is spiritual, right? And then, you know, people often make the distinction that, you know, you have your mind, right? So where you think and where you make wrong judgments or correct judgments. So how do we say that, how exactly is the mind different to the soul? If we are the soul, but, you know, we're thinking about certain things and we talk about controlling the mind. So what's the difference there?
See, the difference for a materialistic person who is engrossed in sense gratification, he cannot think about soul. He will only think about mind. Even if he's more materialistic, he will not think about mind. He will do everything senselessly. He will be only sense gratification person. But somebody who can differentiate between mind and soul has to be in the mode of goodness, at least. Or maybe some sane person. I don't know, mode of passion can also do it, I don't know. But mind and soul can only be understood by somebody who's thoughtful, who's thinking about it. That there are things, means if he's more intelligent, if he's thinking, mind means I consider he's very intelligent, but he will realize that there are things which I want to do but not happening. There are things which I'm not thinking but the idea comes. There are things which are not in my control but they still happen. The result's not in my control. Those kind of people can differentiate the soul and mind. Do it make sense? Because mind is storehouse of desires, not all those definitions is thinking, willing, experiencing. Beyond this, one can't do much. So for somebody who's materialistic and who's on a mental level, if he's sensible, he'll understand that results are not in my control. And if results are not my control, then there is something else. And the other thing which I would like to say, that if he's sensible, he will understand that there's some happiness which lasts much longer than some happiness don't. This may be a crude example, but whatever is on the soul level or heart level, they don't think mind, they think of heart and mind. What your heart wants, follow your heart. Yeah, that's what they think. So that's how I can explain, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji, for answering my question. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna. I think we can stop the discussion today. So once again, thank you very much, Avinash for your nice realization in the class. And devotees who ask the questions. Hope the questions are answered. It's a deep topic. It's a research for the life. And these are a practice which one needs to do regularly. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhu.
So I think we would be completing our conversation with this now. And those who are following us on YouTube, we'll be disconnecting you in few minutes, for a few seconds. We'll be starting again in a few seconds. So don't go away. And all of the devotees, please, those who are on the beginners program, intermediate program, can you please switch on your cameras? It'll be wonderful. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gurudev ki jai. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashta Prayeshva Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama